He was a terrific athlete. He was explosively fast.
He was the Einstein of martial art.
Bruce Lee, the world-renowned martial artist and filmmaker, passed away just before midnight.
So Bruce Lee was killed by idiosyncratic reaction to one tablet.
Yeah.
For over 50 years, fans from around the world have visited Bruce Lee's grace to honor the man who changed martial arts forever. They visit the site, leave flowers, and reflect on the legend he became. But one part of Bruce Lee's story was never supposed to be disturbed, his tomb. It was sealed and left untouched since the day he died.
On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died tragically at the age of 32. The official cause of death, a fatal reaction to aspirin.
Now, after half a century, that tomb has finally been opened. And what was found inside is already raising new questions. Why was it sealed so tightly? What were they trying to protect? Join us as we uncover the mystery buried with Bruce Lee. The rise of Bruce Lee. Before Bruce Lee became a global icon, his story started in San Francisco's Chinatown. He was born there while his father's Chinese opera company was on tour. His birth name was Lee Junfan, which means return again. That name would follow him all his life. Bruce was always pushing boundaries, breaking limits, and redefining what was possible. He spent his early years in Hong Kong. That's where his character really started to form. As a teenager, Bruce Lee got into street fights, a lot of them. He came from a well-known family. His father was a famous opera star.
He literally grew up on the set of the Hong Kong cinema and the backstage of the Cantonese opera.
But Bruce didn't stay in the safe lane like his parents. The streets taught him about survival, about fighting.
Bruce, I think he would describe himself as grown-up street fighting. He was not a real good and serious student in school in Hong Kong.
That's what led him to Wing Chun master Ip Man. Under Ip Man's training, Bruce didn't just learn how to fight, he learned discipline. He learned philosophy. The lessons stuck. They would shape everything he later created. At 18, Bruce moved back to America. That's where everything changed. He started teaching martial arts, but not like anyone else. At the time, most schools only accepted Chinese students. Bruce didn't follow that rule. He opened his doors to everyone. His first school was in Seattle's Chinatown. That's where he met Jesse Glover, his first student in the U.S., and Linda Emery, who would later become his wife. Bruce didn't stop at teaching. In 1964, at a karate tournament in Long Beach, Hollywood took notice. He was electric. That led to Bruce's role as Kato in The Green Hornet. It was his first big TV break. American audiences saw something new, but Bruce wanted more. He wanted to make real martial arts films, his way. Hollywood didn't believe in him. They didn't think a Chinese actor could lead a movie. So Bruce went back to Hong Kong.
We don't want to kill you. Oh, here's a plane ticket. Just go back to Hong Kong for a few years.
There, he made The Big Boss and Fist of Fury. Both movies shattered box office records. His philosophy, using no way as way, and having no limitation as limitation, hit home with audiences around the world. Then, just as his star was rising, it all stopped and took a dark turn. So stay with us. On July 20th, 1973, Bruce Lee died. He was only 32 years old. The world didn't see it coming. One moment, he was changing the game. The next, he was gone. That day, Bruce was at the home of actress Betty Ting Pei. They were talking about a new script. At some point, Bruce collapsed. He was rushed to the hospital, but doctors couldn't save him. The official cause of Bruce Lee's death was cerebral edema, too much fluid on the brain. But not everyone accepted that. Rumors spread quickly. Some said it was foul play. Others blamed an allergic reaction to painkillers.
So Bruce Lee was killed by idiosyncratic reaction to one tablet.
Yeah.
Bruce had just made The Way of the Dragon and finished filming Enter the Dragon. He was finally about to take over Hollywood, but now the world was left with questions and grief. Linda Lee had to decide where Bruce would be buried. He had found massive success in Hong Kong. For many, it seemed like the obvious place, but Linda chose Seattle. That choice raised some controversy. But to Linda, it was simple. Seattle was where Bruce had built his life in America. It was where he opened his first martial arts school, where he taught, where he fell in love. So after much argument from people, Bruce Lee was buried at Lakeview Cemetery in Seattle. His tomb became something more than a resting place. It became a destination. Fans came from all over the world. They left flowers, notes, and tributes. They came to honor the man who taught them to be like water. Bruce's early death left behind a legacy that felt unfinished, but it didn't stop his influence. He had broken through race, language, and tradition. He had changed how people saw martial arts and themselves. In life, Bruce Lee refused limits. In death, he continues to inspire. His tomb is quiet, but it speaks a lot. But the story doesn't stop at his death. Stay with us as we uncover the deeper legacy Bruce Lee left behind. The social revolutionary. Now, to fully understand all about the legacy Bruce Lee left, we have to travel back to the late 1960s and 70s, because back then, Bruce Lee wasn't just kicking down opponents, he was breaking down barriers. While most people remember him as a martial artist and movie star, fewer realize his role in social progress. At a time when America was dealing with deep racial divides, Bruce quietly challenged the rules. Bruce Lee opened his martial arts schools to everyone. That alone was revolutionary. Martial arts instruction had long been closed off to non-Chinese students. Bruce didn't care. If you were ready to learn, he was ready to teach. His students came from every background. To Bruce, fighting styles didn't belong to any one group, and neither did people. He also broke the mold in Hollywood. At the time, Asian characters were rarely shown as strong or complex. They were usually comic relief or background figures. Bruce challenged that. He spoke openly about the lack of real representation, and he pushed for stories where Asian characters had depth, strength, and dignity. He even pitched his own show, The Warrior, centered around a Chinese martial artist in the American West. But the networks passed, saying it wasn't marketable, only to later produce Kung Fu with a white actor in the lead. Bruce knew what he was up against, but he didn't back down. He kept fighting for a seat at the table, not just as an actor, but as a creator and visionary. Bruce didn't just act differently, he lived it. Behind the scenes, Lee trained African-American martial artists. He taught students from every walk of life. His bond with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was one of the strongest. They trained together. They even fought on screen in Game of Death. Bruce believed martial arts could connect people. He was right. When Bruce became a superstar, many expected him to slow down, to stop pushing for change in Hollywood. But instead, he used his fame as fuel. His reach went far beyond movie theaters. He was changing how people thought about fitness, philosophy, and personal growth. He didn't just practice martial arts, he studied them. Bruce Lee's personal library held hundreds of books. He read about fighting styles, psychology, anatomy, and ancient philosophy. He wasn't just training his body, he was training his mind. Bruce didn't follow traditions blindly. He questioned everything. He believed in adaptability. He believed in being honest with yourself. His motto was clear: absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, add what is specifically your own. And that wasn't just for fighters, it was for anyone trying to find their path. But it doesn't end there. Another special thing about Bruce Lee was his workouts. They were ahead of their time. He mixed martial arts with weight training, cardio, and stretching. Today, we call it cross-training. Bruce was doing it in the early 70s, long before the fitness world caught on. And then there was his philosophy, fluid, powerful, and unforgettable. He believed in being adaptable and unstoppable, like water. Bruce wasn't just building fighters, he was shaping thinkers. So, when Bruce died and was laid to rest, fans and the world mourned, not just for a great fighter or special talent, but for someone who had changed the world. But just as they were still trying to cope with that loss, another heartbreak was on the way. Don't go anywhere. In 1993, just 20 years after Bruce Lee's death, his son Brandon Lee died at the age of 28. An accident on the set of The Crow ended his life. A prop gun misfired, causing a fatal wound.
The son of late martial arts star Bruce Lee has died. 27-year-old Brandon Lee was killed during a movie set accident today. He was filming a scene for the movie The Crow when he was hit by a projectile fired from a gun loaded with blanks.
Like his father, Brandon died young, suddenly, and just as he was on the verge of something great. Brandon was buried beside his father. The two graves now stand together, side by side. A father and son, both taken too soon, both remembered forever. People still come to see them. Some bring flowers, others leave notes. Some just stand in silence. They come for Bruce. They come for Brandon. They come because those two names still mean something. Together, they represent more than talent. They represent legacy. And that's why that tomb is so special. It may look like a simple grave, but it tells the story of two extraordinary lives. That's why people wanted to see what was inside, and somehow their wish was granted. Curious to find out what's inside? Stay tuned. Lakeview Cemetery is opened. In 2025, something extraordinary happened at Lakeview Cemetery. You see, for over 50 years, Bruce Lee's tomb in Seattle remained untouched. Sealed in 1973, it became a sacred space, visited, revered, but never disturbed. No one expected that to change. But then came the quiet request. The city council reached out to Linda Lee Cadwell, Bruce's widow. It wasn't an easy call to make. The cemetery needed to perform a long overdue preservation inspection. Routine, respectful, but still, opening the tomb meant reopening one of the most painful chapters of her life. At first, Linda hesitated. She did not want it to be opened, but deep down, she knew Bruce would have wanted this done the right way. He believed in honoring tradition and the future. So with a deep breath and decades of memories still vivid, she said yes. What followed wasn't a media circus. There were no flashing cameras or viral headlines. Just a small team of preservation experts quietly stepping into one of the most personal stories in martial arts history. By early spring, Lakeview Cemetery had transformed into a secure preservation zone. A climate-controlled structure was built around the tomb. The team installed special lighting, adjusted humidity levels, and monitored the environment around the clock. Everything had to be perfect. Security was tight, not for show, but to protect Bruce's legacy. A specialized firm secured the perimeter. Only a handful of experts, each one vetted and trained, were allowed inside. Every tool was sterilized. Every step was rehearsed. Linda Lee, now in her late 70s, gave the team everything they needed. She brought old records, handwritten notes, even sketches of the original tomb layout. She remembered every detail from 1973. The objects she placed beside Bruce. The materials they used. The care they took to honor both his Chinese roots and his American journey. Her daughter, Shannon Lee, took the lead. She met with the team repeatedly, helping finalize the plan. It was personal for her too. She grew up visiting that site, knowing it wasn't just her father's grave. It was a monument to everything he stood for. Before the tomb was opened, Buddhist monks performed a ceremony at dawn. The air was still. The moment was heavy. There were no speeches, just quiet chants, incense smoke curling toward the morning sky, and the soft rhythm of a wooden bell echoing through the trees. The inspection started slowly. The team first removed the outer seal, layer by layer. It was clear the tomb had been well built. The original materials had barely aged. Even after 5 decades, the structure held firm, almost like it was waiting. Inside, there were multiple layers of protection, more than anyone had expected. Redundant systems, moisture barriers, sealants, all working together. Whoever designed it had thought far ahead. And standing nearby, watching it all unfold, was Linda. She didn't cry. She didn't speak much. But every now and then, she pointed to something, a corner of the tomb, the placement of a stone, and quietly explained that Bruce would be very proud of this act. She explained how they had blended tradition with innovation. There were specific materials chosen for cultural meaning. The arrangement of the items inside had symbolic purpose. Every inch of that tomb had been designed with intention. As the final chamber was reached, time seemed to slow down a bit. The preservation team moved more carefully than ever. They weren't just handling artifacts, they were touching on the story of a man who changed cinema, philosophy, and culture. Scanners recorded temperature fluctuations. Ground sensors scanned for stress points. Technicians huddled over laptops, double-checking environmental data in real time. Everything mattered at this point. But they were finally able to open it. And what was found inside Bruce Lee's grave will shock you. Keep watching, because it gets more interesting from here. The items inside Bruce Lee's grave revealed. When Bruce Lee's tomb was finally opened, it was like stepping into a moment, frozen in time. Everything inside looked almost exactly the same as it had in 1973, the day he was laid to rest. The air was still and smelled faintly of sandalwood, the kind burned during his burial ceremony. Unlike many graves from that time, Bruce's tomb was incredibly well preserved. The wood hadn't rotted, the silk fabrics still had their shine, and even the paper items, like photos and letters, were in shockingly good shape. What stood out most was how carefully everything had been placed. Nothing had shifted. Every object was right where it had been set during the funeral, as if time had never moved at all. It felt sacred. It felt personal. Among the most powerful discoveries were Bruce's personal belongings. His famous nunchaku, used in movies like Enter the Dragon, had been specially treated to survive the years. The wooden handles still looked polished, untouched by time. These weren't just props or training tools. As Linda Lee Cadwell once shared, every item placed there carried meaning, each one marking a chapter in Bruce's life, a part of the story he left behind. There was also his first Wing Chun manual, the one he used while training with Ip Man. Inside were handwritten notes in both English and Chinese. They showed how Bruce was already becoming a bridge between Eastern and Western martial arts, even as a young man. And that was not all. One of the most emotional discoveries was a small collection of letters, sealed and protected since 1973. These weren't random notes. They were final messages, goodbyes from family and friends. Each one had been placed in the tomb with love and care, meant only for Bruce. Linda's letters were the most moving. She wrote them in the days between his death and the funeral. They spoke of heartbreak, confusion, and love, but also of strength. Reading through those memories years later, Linda admitted it still hurt, but in that pain, she also found the strength that had carried her forward all along. The letters revealed the dreams Bruce and Linda had shared, their plans for the future, their hopes for their children, and the mission they believed in. As the funeral day came closer, the letters changed. The grief was still there, but there was also a new determination. Linda promised to protect Bruce's message, to make sure people understood what he really stood for: growth, balance, and becoming your best self through martial arts. But one letter stood out from the rest. It was sealed with red wax, stamped with a strange symbol: 2 dragons curled together. No one knew what it meant. When the team carefully opened the envelope, what they found gave everyone chills. It was a letter Bruce had written just days before his death, almost as if he sensed what was coming. The message began with a quiet, powerful opening, addressed to those he believed would carry his legacy forward. The letter didn't feel like a goodbye. It felt like a message for the future, maybe even for us. Bruce wrote about the journey never really ending. He talked about going beyond your limits, learning to change, and moving through life like water. Most of all, he said not to follow his path, but to find your own. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet and thoughtful, but it stayed with all those who encountered it. Like he knew someone out there would need to hear it one day. Some people see it as a lesson, others see it as a challenge. But either way, it's a reminder. Bruce Lee wasn't just about movies or martial arts. Bruce Lee was always about growth and becoming something greater than before. His journey wasn't just about mastering martial arts. It was about evolving as a person and inspiring others to do the same. So, these findings in his tomb might not be the final chapter of his story. Instead, it could be the beginning of a new phase, a next step in his lasting legacy. What are your thoughts on Bruce Lee's life and legacy? How do you feel about the discoveries made in his tomb? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the following video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.